Now let's move on to question 7. Why did Puli dedicated his book Gulam Giri to the American movement to free the slaves? Now Pule, in his book Gulam Giri, which meant slavery, dedicated this book to the American movement to free the slaves because for 10 years America had been seeing a movement that was against the slavery, that was for the abolishment of slavery, and he dedicated this book to all those Americans who fought against the system, who fought against slavery and succeeded in abolishing the slavery from the state of America. He drew a parallel, he drew a similar situation as that of India, that in India also, the untouchables were treated in the same respect. They were seen as slaves, they were seen as doing certain jobs, the certain jobs that were assigned to them because of their caste, their status of the caste. And that was nothing, nothing less than that was happening to the slaves in America. So basically he drew a parallel, and he in this way, in dedicating his book to all those who fought for the abolishment of slavery, he promoted the thinking towards this progressive thought that we should all grow together, we should all move together for abolishment of caste, for abolishment of inequality and untouchability from India as well. So that could be one point. Let's move on to the next question. Question 8 is, what did Ambedkar want to achieve through the temple entry movement? So in the previous one of the slides, I said that Ambedkar was taught in a Christian missionary school. Actually, Jyotira Foley was taught in a Christian missionary school. Ambedkar was made to sit apart from those who belong to the upper caste. So that is what kind of discrimination he faced. He was not allowed to go to temples and everything. So he wanted to achieve through the temple entry movement the right to access to the temples. He had seen untouchability throughout his life, coming from a untouchable caste, so-called untouchable caste during that time, which was Mahars. They were supposed to do a certain job, and Ambedkar was a great scholar. He always wanted to study. He always believed that education was a key to everything. So after having that education, after achieving that level of intellect in his mind, he went on to have some of the movements to abolish caste inequality and abolish untouchability altogether. So that is what he wanted to achieve through the temple entry movement, the abolishment of caste untouchability, to show that all the people, they are from one humankind, and the untouchability system was very orthodox and was not supposed to happen. That is a very cruel way to treat any human. Question 9 is, why were Jyotirao Phule and Ramaswamy Naikar critical of the national movement? Did their criticism help the national struggle in any way? Jyotirao Phule and Ramaswamy Naikar were critical of the national movement for a lot of reasons, and some of the reasons were also connected. Some of the national movement reasons were also connected with the ideologies that they had in their mind. Their ideology was against the upper caste supremacy, and that ideology was sustained in the national movement as well. So they saw the national movement as an uprising that was led only by the upper caste people. The lower caste people had no role in that. So that is why they were very critical of the national movement. Of course, the national movement has seen the entry of the lower caste people as well. We have the greatest example of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who led the national movement through his educated mind, who wrote one of the biggest constitution, one of the greatest constitution the history has ever seen, that is our Indian constitution. So, but that happened after, these people had already began criticizing the national movement, because from their point of view, the national movement was led only by the upper caste people, and it did not include the one of the very critical issues of that time, that was untouchability and caste inequality. So according to them, lower caste people should have been included as well. And after that, even Gandhiji also came up with the term Harijan to call the Dalits or the untouchable people, and he also promoted that all kinds of people, regardless of their caste, regardless of their gender, they should come together for the national movement. They should come together for the freedom struggle, and we can call this in the truest sense that all the people together led us through the national movement, and that is how we gained independence. So that is why Jyotirao Phule and Ramaswamy Naikar, they criticized the national movement because they thought it was led by the upper caste people only. Let's move on to the next question. A quick recap of the whole chapter. Events timeline. 1772 to 1883, Raja Ram Mohan Roy led reforms that abolished sati, that uplifted the widow's remarriage, that uplifted the girls' education, the females' education. He was a forerunner. He was the leading person who was behind one of the greatest movements of all time. He made Britishers ban the sati, and he made Britishers pass a law for the widow remarriages. So he was one of the great forerunners during that time who worked a great deal towards women's reforms. 1829, sati was abolished. Of course, Britishers, they were also very critical of the sati system, and Raja Ram Mohan Roy also had a role to play in it. In 1856, a law to permit widow remarriage, that also happened as a consequence of all the reforms that were led by the Raja Ram Mohan and all the other reformers during that century. And of course, the British, they were also very sympathetic towards the female of the country, and they were also very critical of all these orthodox systems that used to prevail during that time. Of course, the other people, the Indians, saw that as an invasion of the Britishers to their cultural traditions. So it was seen as an attack by the orthodox followers. In 1875, the Arya Samaj was founded. It was founded by Dayanand Saraswati for a fight against the caste inequalities, for education for girls. So for all the sectors that needed reforms, the Arya Samaj was founded by Dayanand Saraswati. In 1929, the Child Marriage Restraint Act was passed. So the Britishers were made to believe that half of the reforms were not, getting successful because the children, they used to get married in a very early age, and that stopped them from gaining that full intellectual level. It stopped them from gaining the education they should gain. So that is how the Child Marriage Restraint Act was also passed by the Britishers in 1929. From 1927 to 1935, Ambedkar's 3 temple entry movements happened. So Dr. B.R. Ambedkar faced discrimination throughout his life because of his low caste status, his untouchable status, and he wanted to, make India free of untouchability. So one of the movements that he led was the temple entry movement, in which he gained access to the temples because the untouchables, they were not supposed to, draw water from the wells or go inside the temple premises. He saw that as, very cruel and very harsh towards the people of the untouchable caste that were called untouchables by the so-called upper caste. So to attack their ideology, he led these temple entry movements to dissolve the upper caste supremacy. The abolition of sati was the start of reforms promoting women's equality and rights in Indian society. So we can see the abolition of sati as the very first thing that happened towards the reforms for women. Towards it is still reforming. The society is still reforming. We still have laws coming up. We still have policies coming up for women every day. We still have parliamentarians arguing and discussing about all the rights that women should have in the present age as well. So we should not say that the movement has stopped. The reform is still going on, but that is the abolition of sati was the front runner. It was the first thing that happened towards the reform of the women. Reformers including Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, Swami Dayanand Saraswati and Veerasalingam Pantulu fought for women's right to education and widows' right to remarry. These all reformers, they were of the view that widow have the same right as that of a man, as that of their male gender. And of course, this sati culture was very, very harsh and cruel to all the women, and widows have a right to remarry because their right, the male during that time, of course we have not discussed that, let's discuss that right now. The male during that time, either Muslim or Hindu, they could have as many wives as they can. They could have 2 or they could have 4 wives if they want. But female, they were only supposed to have 1 husband, and if that husband died, they were supposed to live a life in such an austere form that they were not even willing to live a life that way. They were not treated well by their in-laws, and often when they would not go by the pyre, when they would not go sati on their husband's funeral, it was considered unlucky for that women, that the women could, brought disfame, in that the women would become infamous, and she would, bring all kinds of unlucky charms to the house. So it was not considered a good thing. It was socially very, very backward. So these reformers, they led the reform uh, against sati, and for the reform of widows' right to remarry. Schools for women were set up in the mid 19th century. Many female leaders also came, many female reformers also came up and established institutions in various cities for the education rights of women. Of course, some of the females, they were homeschooled by the wealthy and liberal fathers and liberal husbands, but they were not allowed to go schools outside. So women, schools for especially women and schools for women were set up in the mid 19th century. Women, including the Begums of Bihar, Tarabai Shinde, and Pandit Ramabai, advocated for women's equality. These were also the women who supported, who encouraged women to go out and have the education of the same level as the men were gaining. These females also opened schools. These females also established educational institutions for women. And we still have, in today's society also, not all the females are, encouraged to go to schools, or not all the females are encouraged to pursue higher education. Like all of us, we did not see anything like that. Like as soon as we were born, we were not faced with, our parents did not had this kind of confusion that whether to send our girl child to school or not. We always saw a kind of world that was very easy for us. But let's imagine a world where women were only confined to the household works, and they were supposed to learn only the household works, and then after their husband died, they were supposed to go sati. So of course, this should make a very great impact for us. We should do a lot of reforms ourselves for the betterment of the society. We should not stop at, when we have attained this stage. Rather, we should be progressive towards what else should we achieve for the later, for the world, for the humans in later period. The Prarthana Samaj Bhakti movement believed in spiritual equality of all castes. So Prarthana Samaj was very pro-bhakti movement, and it believed that all castes had spiritual equality. They were all a creation of God, and that God created them as equals. No one was above anyone, and no one was below anyone. So there was no base for inequality at all. So that's what Prarthana Samaj believed in. Reformers including Guru Ghasidas, Haridas Thakur, B.R. Ambedkar, Sri Narayan Guru, and Periyar fought the ideology of Brahmin superiority and worked to secure rights for the untouchables and lower castes. So these all reformers, they worked very, very actively towards the caste inequality and against the caste inequality and the untouchability system. Some of them, brought in whatever justifications they had to give to the people who believed in this system. Many people, they joined these reforms. Many people whose minds were changed due to these rational opinions, they also joined these reforms, and they started, believing in these things. But of course, it took a lot of time. It is still taking time, because even till now, we are not a casteless society. We still have untouchability. We still have laws that bans untouchability altogether. Like we have all the laws which has limitation, but untouchability, Article 17 is the only law which has, nothing which has in its limitation. It is absolute. It has no, further segments. It just says that untouchability is banned, and all the caste related things are also banned. So basically, these reformers, they had this thought from the pre-independence era that this untouchability system was so orthodox that it needed to, get out of the system in order for a more progressive society. People need to be equal in order for a society to grow, in order for a society to, be civilized. So all these people, they fought the ideology of the Brahmin superiority. They fought the ideology of upper caste system. Of course, all these movements also also went towards the process of Sanskritization. If we all know a little bit of sociology, then we would know that Sanskritization also happened, in which the middle class people, the lower caste people adopted the surnames of the upper caste people, so that there would be, they would not be able to recognize, they would not be able to distinguish by their names that that these people belong to a lower caste, that these people are from lower caste. They started, practicing the rituals that the upper caste people were practicing during that time. In 1990s, we had this movement that people started changing their surnames to those of the upper caste surnames, so that there could not be, they could not be distinguished. So that's all for the caste system and the women's reform. We should not forget that it is still prevalent in our society. It has not gone. So we should not stop at what we see as a modern era. This is not the end of modern era. This is not the end of progressive society. Progressive society is a never ending process. We should always, yearn to grow towards something which is better for us, even better for us than what is working right now. So we should all strive to work towards a greater sense of equality, and we should all strive to work towards humanity. So that's the end of the chapter. Hope you liked the video. Thank you so much.